Good morning, everyone. Welcome to worship at Austin New Church. Good morning to everyone that's watching us online. We're so glad that you are also joining us. If you're able to and you would like to stand and join us in song, we'd love to have your voices join together as we just lift up praises to our God and our King. Well, He's the King of our heart.
Good morning, everyone. Be seated, if you will. Hi, I'm Trey. I'm one of the pastors here, and thanks for joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning. We have a few announcements that I'm going to share with you. One is, if you're visiting with us this morning, as you're coming in, if maybe it's your first time or whatever, and you'd like to let us know that you were here and how to contact you, or you have any questions about what's going on, there is a QR code that you can go to. It'll direct you to our website where there's a online information card type thing, and so you can just say, my first visit, I have a question, why are you guys so awesome, that kind of stuff, and then let us just, email you back. It's a great place to start a conversation if you have questions or whatever. Next is if you're part of Austin New Church and you find yourself, this is your church home or whatever, and you want to join Austin New Church in giving, we don't pass a plate, period, but the way we do this is also through online giving. You can do that via this link. Join us there as you support the mission and vision of Austin New Church. We'd love to have you join us as well. On our website, there's an upcoming events page, and it's got different things that are going on in the life of this church. Right now, we've got a contemplative retreat coming in April. We've got a Georgetown meetup way up yonder. We call that Dallas, but up in Georgetown. We're going to be coming up there. If you live in that area, whether you're online or in the room, we'll be there in April. And also there's going to be an Easter egg hunt out in Lakeway, and it's for kids of all ages. If you're out in that area, or if you want to travel the Saturday before Easter, you're welcome to join. Oh, there she is. Laura and Jen Hollers up at their house in Lakeway. And so, but tons more stuff on there. Just a great place to find your people, and gather together. We also have Good Friday. We're doing a multi-church multi-church service of like-minded churches in this town. And so if you'd like to come to a place and join other churches as we worship and remember Christ on Good Friday, and there will be a potluck dinner, you have to go on our upcoming page, follow the links to sign up, and then they'll also tell you what to bring in terms of food stuff. So plan on joining us for that. And with that said, if you would, please stand up. If you're able, find somebody around you that you don't know and just say, hey, glad you're here this morning. And now I go on here and I welcome our out-of-town folks. Out-of-town or just online people. We love that you're there. Maybe you're here just to see Colby this morning. But we love the fact that you are there. We're always available for questions. Give us a call. You can email me at trey@austonnewchurch.com. And look, there's Colby right there. He's coming in just a second. And let us know what's going on in your world, what's happening in your life. Anyway, some of you guys have been part of the Shift book study that Colby wrote. And so I hope you enjoy this time this morning, okay? Okay, I won't. I'm gonna. As soon as people fight. Hey, good morning. All right. Thank you, guys. That's good stuff. It's tough to interrupt that, but anyway. It's my honor, my privilege to introduce my friend to you this morning. This guy, unbeknownst to him a while ago, we've said it a few times now that he's been around, he was very, at least something he had written, had been very instrumental for this church as we moved into affirming spaces, as we started loving and including and accepting and celebrating our LGBTQ friends. Colby was instrumental in that because he had written a book. We didn't know Colby at the time, but we heard this is a resource you need as a church to go through. And so we bought dozens of copies of that book. And our people went through it, and it was transformative. And so it's still probably the number one book I recommend as people are looking for answers and moving theologically into an affirming space. And so that's great. With that in mind, I will say this. My friend Colby Martin has brought a crap ton of books with him this morning, and it weighed down his luggage tremendously. He's going to be in the back. If you'd like to purchase those, they will be available after there. He will sign them. And so plan on buying like 10 of his books to give away to friends or something like that, because we don't need you traveling home to California with those. With that said, Colby, come up here. We love you. Thank you. Good morning.
So there's this old Jewish story about a couple of twin brothers born into, you might say, a bit of chaotic environments, to a kind of family with generational trauma, the kind where, in this particular story, the father loved the eldest more and the mother loved the youngest more. So already from the get-go, there was some issues. And there was this afternoon where the older brother was out hunting, and he comes in and he's just famished, just starved. And the younger brother says, well, I got this beef stew I've been cooking up. And the oldest brother says, I will do anything for that stew. I'm so hungry. And the younger brother says, hey, you know what? Here's an idea. What if, hear me out now, what if you give me the birthright so that I become the oldest of the family? In exchange, I'll give you some of my stew. And the older brother says, deal. Which, I'll just be honest with you, might sound a little bit strange, but when you come from a dysfunctional family, you don't always make the best decisions, okay? A couple years later, these two brothers, once again, there's a situation where the father, old, can't see very well, he's ready to pass on the blessing, like the thing that would solidify his eldest son's inheritance and all that comes with that. And there's this moment where the mother, who again prefers the youngest, hears that this is about to happen and comes up with this conniving, scheming plan to ensure that her favorite child actually gets the blessing. And so while the oldest, again, is out doing his thing, the mom comes up with this plan for the youngest to go in and pretend to be the oldest so that he might get the blessing from his father. And the plan worked. And suddenly the youngest brother got both the birthright and now the blessing. The older brother comes in and hears about what transpires, and in a murderous rage commits that when our father dies, I'm coming for you next. Good morning, Austin. How you doing? I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. This is my third trip here to Austin in the last, I think, 5 months, and I'm not mad about it, Trey. Like, there's something about this place that I find, I don't know, electric. I really like it here. I like your city. I've sat here at ANC now. This is my third time being here in this church. First time up on the stage, and each time I'm like, oh, these are my people. These are my people. So if I ever leave San Diego, which I won't, but if I ever did, Austin is in the top 3 cities that I might find myself relocating to. But I love that I'm here this morning. And like Trey mentioned, I do have some books in the back, but really the only reason I say that is because my first book, which dealt with the topic of homosexuality in the Bible, my second book, which is kind of what I'm out traveling talking about right now, is called The Shift. And it's a survival guide for when you either leave your more conservative evangelical communities or sometimes get kicked out of them, and you find yourself on this journey where you still want to maintain some connection to the Christian heritage from whence you came, but you know in your bones that it's got to be something broader, something bigger, something more inclusive, expansive. Progressive is a word that I use. So it's this book when you move from conservative to progressive Christianity, all the obstacles that you face along the way. It's my attempt to say, here's what you might be experiencing and feeling, and it's normal, and here's some things that might help. So that's what I want to share a little bit with you about this morning, is one particular idea that I have found to be transformative in this journey of moving and shifting, if you will, from conservative to progressive Christianity. And I'm going to do that by going back to this story about these two Jewish brothers, these twins, whom you might recall are named Esau and Jacob. And I'm going to pick up the story in Genesis chapter 32. So this is like 20 years after Esau committed to kill his brother once their dad passed, which then caused Jacob to flee and just left home. And he's now been gone for like 20 years. He has not seen his brother. He has not returned to his homeland. And in Genesis chapter 32, we now are at this point where Jacob is ready to go home. He's ready to see his brother again. And he's understandably anxious about this, because last he heard, he was going to be taken out by his brother. So in Genesis chapter 32, picture the scene. Jacob is all alone on one side of the Jabbok River, where just moments ago he had crossed over the Jabbok River with his family, with his children, with his 2 wives, #biblical marriage. He brought them all over to one side of the river, and then he himself came across to the other side, and he spent the night there all alone. And at some point in the middle of the night, he's woken up by a strange visitor who wrestles him. Which I know some of you in the crowd might find that kind of fun, to be woken up in the middle of the night and wrestled with. Most of us would find it a bit disturbing. And Jacob is awoken to this wrestling match that seems to just go on all night long. Neither one can prevail over the other. There's even a point where the strange visitor does this like cheap shot and knocks out Jacob's hip, and he finds himself a bit, humbled in that moment, and yet they still are fighting and fighting. And finally, the battle begins to ease out, and we have this exchange. But before I tell you about the exchange, I need to back up because, again, we have Jacob on one side of the Jabbok River all alone, and his plan for the next day, if you've ever read Genesis 32, it's this wonderful story. His plan was this, because he hasn't seen his brother in 20 years. His plan was, well, I've acquired quite a bit of wealth and resources. So here's what I'm going to do, Jacob said. I'm going to send on ahead of me 3 different groups of bulls and goats and sheep, kind of like history's first edible arrangements, I think is what's happening. And he's like, he sends on this group to Esau's camp, and when they meet them, they'll say, yeah, Jacob's right behind us, but Jacob won't be right behind him. It'll be another group of gifts. Jacob's right behind us. No, it's another group of gifts. And so Jacob has this plan to try and pacify his brother Esau, to bring the murderous rage maybe down a little bit with these lavish gifts, bribery, a bit of manipulation. And so there's a sense in which maybe from the 20 years from when Jacob, thanks to his mom's conniving ways, picked up these manipulative, conceit, bending of the truth ways, it's been 20 years and he kind of hasn't maybe grown all that much, is what I'm picking up here. Because he's still doing the swindling thing, the bending of the truth, the conniving. So he's got this plan to try to pacify his brother. All right, back to the middle of the night, late night wrestling match. Jacob, alone, interrupted by a stranger. They're wrestling. Neither one can prevail over the other. And the sun is about to rise, and it's about to be this day where Jacob's going to then enact his plan. And there's this moment where the stranger pleads to be done with the wrestling. And Jacob says, "Not until you bless me," which is a weird thing to say to someone who shows up to fight you in the middle of the night. Not until you bless me. Why would Jacob ask or expect a blessing from this stranger? We'll come back to that. In response to being asked for a blessing, the stranger says, "What's your name?" Again, really weird. Who wrote this script? I don't know. "What's your name?" And Jacob says, "I'm Jacob." And the stranger says, but you see, that's where you're wrong. You were Jacob. But from this point forward, you shall be called Israel. And then Jacob responds with, "Okay, well, what's your name?" To which the stranger completely ignores him, does not answer his question, but blesses Jacob. And then the sun comes up, the stranger disappears, and Jacob, now known as Israel, stumbles away, limps away, and declares the place henceforth to be called Penuel, quote, "because I've seen God face to face, and my life has been rescued." All right, I'm going to give you 3 observations about this. 3 observations that I hope will lead towards this thing that I said has been one of these key insights, one of these core guiding lights for me as I have myself gone through this journey of faith for these last 10 years, this shifting faith, but even more so as I've pastored and guided people in this journey. So 3 observations about the story really quick. First of all, are you ready for this? You have issues. Like all of you. No offense. I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you have issues. Oh, you looked away from me. You didn't like that I called you out. Okay, yep, you have issues. But here's the thing. We all have issues. We all have issues. This is no surprise. You have issues. But here's the thing, is they're really, by and large, they're not really your fault. They're not really your fault. Most of our issues, most of the things that hinder us in life or that hold us back from various things, whatever sort of falls under this umbrella of issues, most of these are things that are a result, a product of our childhood or how we were raised or where we were raised or when we were raised. You have issues. I have issues. They're not really our fault, though. So many of our issues began as these defense mechanisms. When we were young, ways that maybe we didn't get the kind of security and the safety that we needed as a young child. And so we developed these sort of defense mechanisms as a way to either shield ourselves from our lack of getting them or break through and extract them from others. And so we have these issues that at times as we were young sort of kept us safe, or so we thought, but then they calcified as we got older, and then they became things that really maybe don't serve us any well. And so a lot of times, there's a lot of work happening right now about generational trauma and the ways that childhood trauma stays with us and calcifies into become these things that prevent us from connection, prevent us from intimacy, prevent us from wholeness. So yeah, you have issues, and they're not really your fault. But they are your responsibility. They're not your fault, but they are your responsibility, which is to say, like, once you become aware or once you are tuned in to the ways in which you maybe sabotage yourself in health, or ways in which you fear intimacy and connection, the ways in which you shirk from vulnerability, or the ways in which you have a hard time connecting, whatever your issues might be, not your fault, but they are your responsibility, which is to say, what you choose to do now, only you can really make that choice. I'm going to come back to that. Number 2, second observation. If you look up the meaning, and some of you might already have this in your mind about the Genesis 32 and Jacob wrestling this late night visitor. If you were to look it up, kind of the general consensus of what this story means, you're gonna find 2 dominant interpretations of it, right? That either Jacob wrestled God or Jacob wrestled an angel of the Lord. And I'm not here to say that either of those are wrong. Good Lord, do not let me tell you what is right and what is wrong about the Bible, except for unclobber. But anyway, I think those are great interpretations, and they have served faithful people throughout the ages and have done all sorts of great things. I'm not saying that's a bad interpretation of it. But a number of years ago, I was thinking a lot about this story. And I was thinking about my own life and my own story. And when I was reading the details of it and reading what happens after the story, which I'll get to here in a second, and thinking about Jacob, who I have this real interesting connection to. I think Jacob is a strong type 3 on the Enneagram, which is also my type. Ugh. I mean, we're the best, but also, ugh. Just this ability to kind of massage and manipulate the truth a little bit, if it serves our purpose or our gain. And so I can relate to Jacob. But I remember reading this story, and here's what I think. For me, when I read this story, and I read Jacob wrestling with this unnamed stranger, I think, for me, this is a picture of Jacob wrestling with an old version of himself. Consider the fact that Jacob was all alone, just he and himself. Consider how evenly they were matched. One could not prevail over another. Think about the interesting interplay about the names. What's your name, Jacob? What's your name? And he doesn't respond, almost as if to say, why do you ask me my name? You already know it. It's like the It's like the host who throws a party, and when everyone comes over, they have name tags out at the front door, and everyone else has to put a name tag on, but the host is like, you already know my name. I'm not wearing a name tag. It's almost like that. Like, why are you asking my name? You know who I am. And then this fascinating change of name. Like, you went into this thing as Jacob, but now you're Israel. And so when I read this, what comes up for me is I think maybe Jacob is wrestling with a previous version of himself. And if you're here today, or here online, I think I'm looking at the camera. I've got a hunch that you can relate to the experience of going through this shift, this journey of faith, this transformation, this growth, this evolution, this leaving of maybe your more conservative or evangelical community and moving into something more open and progressive. And my hunch is you can relate to these moments where it feels as though the old version of you is kind of coming online, resisting your efforts to grow. You might think to yourself, man, I don't believe this thing anymore. I don't have that part of, I don't practice my faith in that way. And you might have these moments where you feel like the old version of you is like, whoa, what are you doing? You're seriously going to not believe that anymore? Or you're seriously going to start believing that? And what I want to say is, like, that makes all the sense in the world to me. Of course. Of course that happens. Because this old version of yourself fought really hard to get you where you are. It's all you've ever known. And so when suddenly you start branching out and asking questions or getting curious about things or meeting new people or going to new churches or not going to old churches, yeah, there's these moments where it's like this old version of yourself comes online and says, hey, what are you doing here? You're walking away from everything that we've built together? So I read this and I'm like, I think Jacob was in this transitional moment where maybe for the first time in his life he was ready to do something different. And this old version of himself comes online to say, whoa, hey, not so fast. Not so fast. And I also think it's fascinating how the late night visitor, who again I'm calling like Jacob 1.0, has this like cheap shot, right, where he sort of like knocks out the hip socket of Jacob/Israel. And I don't know about you, but that's the voices that come in my head of the old versions of Colby from 5, 10, 20 years ago, like, knows exactly where to hit me. Knows exactly the thing to say to get me to like freak out, panic, get scared, want to retreat. Like, that's a cheap shot. I know. It's you. If you recall, I told you that Jacob had this plan to try and pacify his brother, to send ahead these lavish gifts, to try and lower the temperature and sort of manipulate, all in a way, you know, as the story goes, all in a way to not really take responsibility for his actions from 20 years ago. And this is really the crux of the thing. This is really the point, is this plan is an effort to avoid taking responsibility. Again, I can relate to Jacob in some disturbing ways, where sometimes it's easier for me to, I don't know, just try and do a bunch of nice things for someone that I've hurt. I'm not actually going to apologize for that, but I'll do some extra dishes. You're welcome. And then Jacob wrestles with this old version of himself, and they have this interaction around his name and I'm Jacob. No, actually, now you're Israel. Now let me read you what happens when the sun comes up and the day begins. So this is Genesis now, the next chapter, Genesis 33. Just 3 verses. Verse 1 says this. So then Jacob looked up and saw Esau approaching with 400 men. They were both kind of showing up expecting a conflict. And this is what Jacob had been trying to pacify to avoid. And Jacob divided the children among his 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. Verse 2, he put the servants and their children first, and then Leah and her children after them, and then Rachel and Joseph last. And again, you're reading this and you're like, cowardly Jacob, once again, it's going to just be at the back of all this, hoping to avoid taking responsibility. But then, listen to verse 3. He himself went in front of them and bowed to the ground 7 times. That's not Jacob, y'all. That's Israel. That's Israel. Jacob was all about avoiding taking responsibility. He was all about playing with the details to try and get out of it. He was about manipulation, conceit. But Israel's different. Israel's gone through some things. Israel goes to the front of the line and takes full responsibility for his actions. And that leads me to my last observation here. So to say it again, sometimes when we start shifting in our faith, our old selves, it comes online, of course it does, and resists, of course it does. Almost like a resentment towards our movement forward, our growth, our changing of how we believe, our changing of how we practice, our changing of who we hang out with and who we don't hang out with anymore. Our old self comes online and resists and resents that. It tries to pull us back into our old ways, back where it was safe and comfortable, back when we had small groups that we liked. Did we like them though? back into this cozy world where we knew that we were the good guys. We were the right ones. Do you guys remember that? Like safe, soft, secure feeling of being right? Oh. Come back, our old self says. Like, come back. But I think there comes these moments where we really do have to and or get to make a choice of what to do with that old version of ourselves. By and large, we don't necessarily have much say over when the old self comes online. This is what is known as like triggers or being activated. Like that pretty much happens without our conscious effort. We don't have a lot of choice in that. So when the old self comes online and starts to freak out and starts to whack at your hip socket, knowing all the tender spots to try and get you to cave, like not a lot you can do about that. That's going to happen. But what you can do next, you actually do have a lot of agency in. And this is the responsibility piece. Like you are responsible for your life. No one else is. So with that in mind, listen to then. This is the very first words spoken by late night visitor / Jacob, old version Jacob. These are the very first words after an all-night wrestling match with cheap shots and everything. Listen to the very first words that this individual, that this old self says, this old Jacob says to new Jacob. But actually, I'm going to have my phone read it because I don't want there to be any tone. I just want you to hear, these are the words spoken in Genesis 32, verse 26.
Genesis chapter 32, verse 26. Let me go because the dawn is breaking.
I think usually we read that line or we hear that line and we hear aggression. Oh, let me go. The dawn is breaking. We hear aggression. We hear intensity, resentment, frustration. Let me go. Right? I'm stuck in this. I've been wrestling for hours. Let me go. I'm going to give you another way to hear this. And as I do, imagine this really is old Jacob saying to new Jacob, or even better yet, imagine this is old you. The you of 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't know how far you need to go back. I don't know which version of you comes up most often in these late night wrestling matches. But go to that version. And hold it in your mind for just a second. And hear it spoken like this. Let me go. Let me go. You see, I think what can happen is these old versions of ourselves come online and they start to resist growth and resent our movement and we like feel held back by them. But y'all, that's just where it starts. Even though the old version of us started it, it's the current version of us that gets to end it. I think what can happen sometimes is when those old versions come online, we hold on to them far longer than we need to. And I wonder if today you could hear some version of your old self saying to you, hey, bud, let me go. It's okay. I know I came out swinging because I was really freaking out. I was really scared. But I see now where you're at, and I see that you're taking care of yourself, and I trust you. So just let me go, bro. It's okay. It's okay. And this is what I want to leave you with. I think there comes a time and multiple times, this is not a one and done thing. There are these moments as we shift, as we move in our faith journeys where we get confronted with these old versions of ourselves and it has the option to hold us back, or there's this invitation, I think, from God, from Spirit, from universe. I don't care what metaphor, what language you use, but there's this invitation from that which is beyond us, that which is within us, that, as Paul said, that which in we live and move and have our being. I think there is this invitation to just let go. Let go of those past versions of ourselves. They served us well. It was great. Thankful for them. But now we can kind of just let them go. Let it go. Can you hear these versions of you that used to believe A, B, and C about God, or X, Y, and Z about the Bible, or whatever it is? And now there's this version of you that either questions those things or has audited those beliefs and no longer holds to them anymore, or believes things that are kind of wildly different. And you have these voices in your head that are often your own voice coming at you, and maybe that voice today is just saying, let me go. Let me go. This isn't who you are anymore. This isn't who you are anymore. You're new. You're different. You've changed. And it's good. Go. I actually bless you. Remember when Jacob was like, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me? I think your old self is ready and willing to do that. Yeah. I bless you. Go on. Go on. I've been in this, I've had to let go of all different versions of myself. I've had to let go of the Bible answer guy. God, I found so much identity in that. The guy who knew all the answers guy. When I began auditing so much of my faith and responding now to questions about theology or God or whatever, responding with, I don't know. That was real scary for a while, and I had to let go of the part of me that always had to have an answer. I'm in a season of life right now where I'm being invited to let go of Pastor Colby. I've been a vocational full-time pastor for 20 years, and now I'm not? Oof. I'm being invited to let go of husband Colby. I was in a marriage for 19 years, and now I'm not? Oh. It's my responsibility. I'm the one that gets to let go of these. And when we finally do, here's the fun part. When we finally do let go of some of these past versions of ourselves and trust that it's going to be okay, we are forever altered as a result. We are forever altered as a result. As the story says, we walk with a limp. And I'm going to invite the band up here as I close out. And I think that when people suggest that Jacob wrestles with God in this story, again, I don't want to take away, like, that has done great good for people to think of it that way. But for me to consider that Jacob wrestles God is for me to then think about God as someone who cripples us. As though God is the one who wounds us and causes us to walk with a limp. And that's just not a God that makes sense to me anymore. I don't believe God is out here knocking people around and causing us pain. No, I actually think God's the one who rescues us from those moments when we get stuck in fear and shame as we wrestle with our old selves, wondering, do we really want to keep going and growing and transforming? Is this really a path we want to go on? I think it is God who rescues us in those moments. God doesn't cause you to limp. Life does. Life is hard. Life is hard. And for me, God is the one who blesses us as we limp, as we go along, forever altered, forever changed by these moments of growth and change and alteration. God's the one that says, yeah, I see you. I see your limp, and it's all good, baby. It's all good. That just means that you've seen some things, that you've lived some life, and that along the way you've said yes. Yes to growth. Yes to change. And I'm really proud of you. So may you, my friends, as you go from here, may you trust that when it gets hard to shift through these various stages and seasons of your faith and your spiritual life, it's not hard because you're doing it wrong, okay? It's just hard because it is hard. It is hard. And sometimes the thing that trips you up are these old versions of you that fear you changing. And they know just the right words to say to try and question you and make you doubt yourself. But may you trust that actually you get to choose what to do. You get to choose what to do. When you're ready, you can just let go of those old versions of you. You really can. You can thank them for how they got you here. And you can trust that ultimately the prior yous want you to grow. They do. You do. And they bless you. They bless you in that. And when that happens, when you wrestle and you fight and you grow weary and exhausted and you finally see the wisdom, and you finally have the courage and you finally get vulnerable enough to just let go and trust, may you know that in that struggle, that just like Jacob, you have seen the face of God and it has brought you liberation. Amen.
I've been held by the Savior. I felt that fire from above. And I've been down to the river. Yeah. I ain't the same as a prodigal return. So I'm singing this today that all my hope is in Jesus. I thank you, God, that yesterday's gone. And all my sins are forgiven. 'Cause I've been washed by the blood. Come on and tell them.
And I'm no stranger to the prison. I won't shackles and chains. But I've been free and forgiven. I'm not going back. I'll never be the same. All my hope is in Jesus. Thank God that yesterday's gone. And all my sins are forgiven. I've been washed by the blood. Come on, Jeremy. Said there's a kind of thing that just breaks a man out. Breaks him right on down to his knees. God, you know that I've been there more than a time or two. Well, then he picked me up and he showed me what it means to be free. All my hope is in Jesus. Yes, it is. Thank God that yesterday's gone. Don't you know that I've been washed? I've been washed by that blood. Yeah, washed by the blood. Oh, yes, I am. My sins are all forgiven. Yes, they are.
Wow, y'all are good. Understatement of the year. Jeremy George, thanks for being with us this morning. Head of the jazz department at Houston Tillotson. Very good. It's an honor. Thanks for being here. We'd like to close out our time of worship in a time of communion. And so the way we do that here at ANC is we'll read through some liturgy. We'll say the Lord's Prayer together. And then around at the stained glass windows, they have the little all-in-one Jesus-able packets with the communion wafer and a little bit of juice in the bottom, and then you'll go grab those. We've got more now at the 8 windows. Now it's not just 4. We've found it kind of clogged up at the windows, so we're gonna spread them out a little bit more. But make your way there, follow somebody, grab a packet for yourself, and return to your seat. And then during this last one song, you'll want to do that, and you can just take it at your convenience. And then, but let's do. Again, I haven't led communion in quite a while. I was just thinking about, because Jason's always done this part. But read with me on the screen, because I don't have it memorized at all. But then we'll read this together, and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer. Merciful God, we believe that you accept our heartfelt confessions today, knowing you to be gentle and kind, even when we are not. We confess. We have been distracted at times, lacking in love. We have failed to love our neighbors as ourselves because we failed to love ourselves as you do. Forgive us, we pray, and free us to be the people of peace through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And on the night Jesus was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it. And he said, as often as you break this bread, as often as you eat together, remember me. And after supper, with all of his friends at the table sitting on one side, Jesus took the cup and he raised it and he said, this is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink this cup, you'll remember me. And so that's what we do. That's what we remember every time we take communion together. Say the Lord's Prayer. We say our Father and Mother just to shock people, I think. But we also do it. We also do it because we know God is not gendered. And so we want to be inclusive in that as well. So say this with me. Our Father and Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Is yours complete. My heart is yours only. Your love with no reservation. You're not looking for perfection. There's no need in me pretending. I give you everything. I give you everything. You deserve my full attention. Nothing less than my devotion. Oh, speak to me and I will listen, and I give you everything. I give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. have my heart. Yes, you can have my heart. Be the Lord of my emotions. Set me free from selfish motives. Search me till there's nothing hidden. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, have my heart. Have my heart is yours forever. My heart is yours forever. My heart is yours forever. My past self can say the same thing. My present self can say the same thing. That's the one thing that doesn't change. That my heart is yours forever and ever and ever. My heart is yours forever. Yes, it's yours. Let's sing this if you want my heart. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my yes, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my yes, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my all, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my all, you got it. You got it. Oh, you can have my heart. You can have my heart. I sing. Oh, you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Sing. Oh, you can have my heart. Yours completely. My heart is yours, open. Yours only. My heart is yours, open.
Our benediction today is written by Lauren Blakely, and I don't know how she does it, but she puts my heart to the page. And she writes, "In times of injustice, I remember the little girl who protected herself by being quiet when she had so much to say. When doubts surface, I think of the curious girl that learned her safety came from pushing hard questions aside. In moments of suffering, I can see the scared girl who lamented in silence for fear of being seen as unfaithful. When others experience joy, I can still feel the anger of the girl that convinced herself she wasn't worthy of love because hers looked different. Even through the discontent, there was certainty in the rules, safety in living within set boundaries. But time passes, things change, injustices become hard to ignore, doubts and questions take up more space, and safety starts to feel like suffocation. As we gather the courage to take tentative steps outside the only home we've ever known, the ghosts of who we have been follow us, telling us our worth lessens with every step we take and filling our minds with whispers of guilt and shame. Guilt for leaving the versions of ourselves that carried us to this point. Shame for untangling the mess of beliefs that were folded into our hearts. At first, the whispers feel like shackles anchoring us to this past and holding us back from the beautiful, imperfect life we see on the horizon. But as we linger in our new freedom, the shackles become lighter, and we find the Lord our hearts had always longed for, the one that makes room for both our joy and our pain, that encourages our questions and our doubts, that holds our fear and shame with a gentle, healing hand, and reminds us that our worthiness was never in question. May you go in peace today and with a sense of your worth, and we'll see you next week.